Hi, this is Marie from Underground Crafter. Have you ever wondered if the AccuQuilt is right for you? Well, today I'm going to share a little bit of an overview of the AccuQuilt GO Me. It's kind of their entry-level machine, and we're going to open up the box, see what's inside, and try it out. Now, let me take a step back. If you're not familiar with an AccuQuilt, they are different machines that are specifically made for cutting fabric, and they have a lot of different machines. The Go Me is more of a portable model. It's a little bit smaller and it's hand cranked, but they do go all the way up to much larger models, and including models that operate electrically and you don't have to do any hand cranking. So what's inside the box? So as you can see, the box is fairly small. It's quite heavy, and you should be really careful if you get one about lifting it up without holding the bottom, because the bottom is just basically cardboard folded together. So I actually reinforce mine with tape because I store it in the box. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go inside and see what's inside. So we have a set of little booklets here. So they have a pattern and idea book, and this includes for what comes inside, you get two dies. There is a finished half square triangle and a finished quarter square triangle, and both of them will measure 3 inches when the block is finished. Then there is, let's see, what's this? A little instruction booklet and kind of a quick start guide, and then an extended warranty if you register it. So that's good. This is a little cutting mat. I told you this one was portable. Now the machine itself comes in this little cute bag, which is great because I think we all know that any machine that you have that deals with sewing is going to end up little fabric dust bits. So having a little bag for it is great. Okay, and you can see this is what it looks like folded up, and when I switch camera positions I'll show you what it looks like opened out. And then it also comes with two dies, and so this one shows you a couple of different options for making a 6-inch block, and so does this. So you get a few different patterns. There's also a ton of free patterns on their website that are made using the AccuQuilt fabric cutter. So when you're ready, let's see how to use it. Okay, so you see the Go Me, it's very portable. It's not light, I'm going to be totally honest. You can lift it with one hand, but it's not, an ounce. It's hefty. But it is portable. You can carry it around. So what I'm going to do is now show how it would open. So you see that's pretty easy. The two sides come out, and this is the hand crank. Okay, so how does it actually work? Well, what you're going to do is you're going to take, let's see, we have all these pieces that I showed you earlier. I'm going to do the half square triangle. Okay, so I've taken the half square triangle out of the case, and you can see that it's a slightly different color, the foam, so you can see where it's actually going to cut. And what they suggest that you do when you're cutting is to try to leave 1/2 inch more fabric to make sure that you actually cut the fabric. And and I forgot to mention this earlier, but one of the things that I like is on the side they give you all the information. Obviously that's to be in the store, but it doesn't come off, it actually stays on, so you can still know, like, because let's say you had a whole bunch of these, you'll be able to see, okay, this one is the half square 3-inch finished triangle versus another one that looks the same because it's the same size. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to use the cutter. So you're going to start with your die on the bottom, and this may be obvious, but the green part is going to be facing down, the foam part's going to be facing up. You're going to put your fabric on top, You can layer up to 6 layers of fabric, but it depends on the type of fabric, right? If it's a really thick fabric, like it's not going to work in that way. But I just folded this piece of fabric in half. And I didn't iron this fabric, which obviously, if you were really going to use it for quilting, you should. And then on top, you're going to put your cutting mat. And you know, you can use any size. This one happens to be pretty much the same size. So now you're going to push the die, the fabric, the mat, this whole thing against the roller. So my camera just conked out on me while I was filming that, so I'm gonna have to move to a different camera, but you can see that it cut these out pretty well. Obviously they're wrinkled because, as I said, I didn't iron them, so we're gonna do that again so that you can see it this time. So I'm gonna move this into frame a little more and get another piece of fabric. So same thing, I'm taking a piece of fabric that's a little bit wider and I'm folding it over, and you'll notice that I did not iron it. And once again, that I'll mention, if you were actually going to use this in a quilt, you should definitely iron it, but these right now are just scrap pieces that I'm using. Okay, so you have your fabric over the die, and then I'm going to take my cutting mat and I'm going to put it on top. Okay, now I'm placing it into the die cutter and I'm going to press it up against the roller until I can feel the roller. And now I'm going to start cranking, and you hear it makes a little bit of a crunching sound, and then it comes through. When it plops out onto the other side, it's ready, and you can see that the fabric separates pretty easily. And because I had 2 layers, I have 2 of each piece now. Now you can see there's a little squared edge, so that when you sew them together, you know, you'll have some space for trimming and so on, but these are going to be half square triangles. Now, since I filmed this video, I've actually used different dies with this machine, and what's great about it is it can use dies of several different sizes. Even though the GO is really small, because it has a 6-inch cutting width, it's compatible with over 150 different dies, including any die that's 5 inches by 10 inches, 6 by 12 inches, 6 by 6 inches, or 6 by 24 inches. For some of those longer dies, you will need a longer cutting mat, just like I'm shown using here. Okay, so now that we've seen, you know, what's inside the box, how easy it is to use the AccuQuilt GO, let me just share a couple of other things that I've noticed since using it. First of all, I mentioned earlier that it's lightweight, but not no weight, and I did look it up. It's 8.5 pounds, so that gives you a sense of how big it is weight wise. And the other thing I wanted to share is that there are over 150 dies that you can use with this particular model, even though it is smaller than all the other ones. Even though it's portable and smaller than the other models, it doesn't mean that you don't have a range of different products you can use. I am really excited to use it for strip piecing, and I actually have 2 cutters that go with that. In the video you saw me using this one, which cuts 3 different size strips, 1 inch, 1.5 inch, and 2 inch, and those are the actual cuts, not the finished size. So the finished size are 1/2 inch, 1 inch, and 1.5 inch. And then I also have one that cuts 2.5 inches for finished 2 inch, which for those of you that like jelly rolls and those type of quilts is the same one as that. Now, people ask a lot, is there fabric waste? And it all depends on how you put your fabric in. So one of the things you saw me doing in the video was folding over fabric that I had in the existing size that the fabric was. So at the end, whatever waste or excess I could cut away easily. You can also pre-cut your fabric to exactly the width of the die. They do recommend leaving about 1/2 inch of space on each side. I find it easier to just sort of fold over pieces that are half yard or smaller. If you have really large pieces of fabric like yardage cuts, it would probably make sense to cut them first. So the amount of waste would depend on how accurate your cuts are before you're putting it through the machine. One thing to keep in mind is that the edges are not cut off on the strip die pieces. So if your piece is longer than the die, those edges will still be attached. And so what'll happen is you'll end up needing to trim the edges at that point, which is also good for avoiding waste because you can, like I was using mine for some scrappy fabric, and so I only had to cut away, the piece that didn't get cut by the cutter, so I could keep the edge pieces that were already at angles and things like that. I could keep them whole and not worry about wasting fabric that I didn't want to. I'm putting wasting in air quotes because I think everyone feels differently about how much they want to deal with scrap fabric and what is considered an amount of usable fabric. But if you are a person that does, let's say, string quilting and you do use like really thin and small scraps, you don't have to worry about that with the AccuQuilt. Depending on how you put your fabric in the die, you can still sort of salvage those pieces that you would use later. So personally, I find this easier to use for strip piecing because I have a pretty small sewing space. I think folks saw I'm using this sewing table is not that wide, and so it's actually not as wide as my larger cutting mat, so it's actually easier to put the AccuQuilt, which is only 6 inches wide, on the table and cut strips than it is to try to get a large quilting mat on the table, a large quilt cutting mat on the table, and then cut my pieces in strips. For me, I also find that because you can cut a lot more layers and it's a lot more accurate, and you're not necessarily having as much pressure on both hands. So I know when you do use an acrylic ruler and a rotary cutter, you're sort of pressing down with both hands the whole time you're cutting because you're holding the ruler in place and then you're holding the cutter in place. And so for me, that is a lot more pressure or weight down on both wrists than what I find with this device, where I could be seated if I want. I could stand, as I did in the videos, to sort of give people an angle of what I'm doing. And I'm cranking, which I can do with either arm because the way the crank mechanism is, it doesn't require a huge amount of strength. So I was able to do it just as well with my left hand, even though I'm right-handed. So that's kind of my viewpoint on the AccuQuilt, what I like about it. I think if you sew a fair amount, if you don't love the ironing and cutting part and you want to dive into the sewing part, and I should say you're a quilter or you use kind of um, repeated shapes of fabric in your sewing. So for instance, if you're using strips or triangles, or even they have more applique oriented dies, like I have one that is for a mitten and a stocking shape that you could use for, like winter stuff. It's not to make mittens, it's like a tiny little mitten that you might use on a quilt block or a Christmas stocking or something like that. So I think if you like using repeated shapes in your sewing, if you don't love cutting, either because it's uncomfortable for you or just because it's not your favorite thing, if you have a relatively small space, or if you like taking your projects on the go, then I think the AccuQuilt GO could be a great tool to add to your arsenal. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks so much and have a great weekend.